Imagine staring at the night sky, its silence stretching endlessly above you. Every star, every glimmer of light is part of a system older than everything we know. But sometimes something arrives that doesn't belong, something that breaks every rule written into the language of physics. So before we begin, make sure you're comfortable, because once you hear what's been discovered, you might never look at the sky the same way again. If you love mysteries hidden among the stars, make sure you subscribe, because tonight we're stepping beyond our solar system into the story of the object that will change your view of space forever. In 2017, a signal of motion flickered across the data streams at the Pan-STARRS Observatory in Hawaii. It wasn't a star, it wasn't a planet, and it definitely wasn't staying. This strange visitor, moving faster than anything bound to the sun, would soon be named Oumuamua, a Hawaiian word meaning a messenger from afar arriving first. But the more astronomers studied it, the less sense it made. Oumuamua wasn't glowing like a comet. It had no tail, no trail of vaporized ice, no halo of dust or gas. It was silent, perfectly cold, perfectly reflective, and rotating in a way that made its brightness flicker rhythmically like a cosmic heartbeat. When the numbers were checked, it was already leaving, moving at a velocity high enough to escape the pull of our sun forever. Then came the real shock. It was accelerating, as if something invisible was pushing it, a tiny but measurable thrust that defied gravity and sunlight pressure. No known natural explanation fit. Theories ranged from a fragment of nitrogen ice to a pancake-shaped shard of an alien world, to something far more unsettling, a possible piece of technology, drifting in silence between the stars. For months, telescopes around the world tried to chase it, but it was too fast. By the time its light faded, Oumuamua had left more questions than answers. Yet the universe wasn't done with us. 2 years later, another traveler entered Borisov, an interstellar comet. Unlike Oumuamua, Borisov looked familiar. A long, icy tail, gas jets, the usual cosmic mess. A reminder that most visitors are just frozen wanderers. But still, the thought lingered. If one object could break the rules, could another arrive that rewrites them completely? Now, in the year 2025, astronomers are watching something that might finally give us the answers we've been chasing, or open an entirely new mystery. They call it 3-Eye Atlas. The name sounds almost alive, doesn't it? Discovered early in the year, it wasn't a faint streak like Oumuamua. It was massive, possibly 20 kilometers wide, a dark mountain drifting through interstellar space and heading directly toward the inner solar system. Unlike the others, scientists spotted it early enough to trace its path with precision. Its orbit would carry it past Mars, near Venus, and then close to Jupiter, but mercifully missing Earth. Still, what they saw in its composition and motion has already begun to challenge everything we thought we understood about the birth of galaxies, planets, and even time itself. 3-Eye Atlas is old. Not just ancient like an asteroid or a frozen comet, but galactically ancient. Its estimated age is 7 billion years older than the Sun, older than Earth, older than every mountain, ocean, and atom that makes up you and me. It comes from the thick disk of our galaxy, a region filled with relics from the dawn of the Milky Way. That means it may have seen things that our solar system has never even imagined. What makes it so extraordinary isn't only its age or size, it's its stability. Where other interstellar travelers tumble chaotically, 3I Atlas moves with calm precision, as if guided by invisible intent. Its spin is slow, measured, graceful, almost like a spacecraft keeping balance. Even its brightness is strange. A mirror-like shimmer, faint but steady, reflecting light in a way that doesn't match any known mineral signature. To many scientists, this is simply another puzzle of cosmic physics waiting to be solved. But to others, it looks like something more deliberate. The moment 3I Atlas crossed the orbit of Neptune, its trajectory began to shift slightly, not enough to alarm, but enough to notice. The change couldn't be explained by Jupiter's gravity or solar radiation. It was as if the object had adjusted itself, a subtle nudge that redirected its course toward the plane of the solar system where the planets reside, where we reside. And that's when the comparisons to Oumuamua began to resurface. Had we just encountered another messenger from beyond, or was this the same force, returning with something larger, something designed to stay longer? When Oumuamua left our solar system, it left behind more than data, it left behind unease. It felt like we had caught a glimpse of something we weren't supposed to see. A traveler passing through, silent and fast, like a shadow between suns. And now, with 3I Atlas, that feeling has returned. Only this time, it's stronger. Because this one isn't running away. It's staying long enough for us to watch. At first, astronomers treated it like any other interstellar visitor. They charted its orbit, measured its brightness, and estimated its mass. Simple things. Really mathematics, an observation, the old dance of curiosity and patience. But very quickly it became clear. This object was nothing like Borisov and nothing like Oumuamua. When light from the sun struck it, it didn't scatter the way it should have. There was no telltale flare of sublimating ice, no cometary tail peeling off behind it. It remained dark, almost as if it absorbed sunlight, like some kind of ultra-black material that swallowed illumination whole. Yet strangely, it still shimmered faintly around the edges, like a dying ember seen through a veil. The spectral analysis revealed something extraordinary. Its albedo, the reflectivity of its surface, was inconsistent. Sometimes it appeared as bright as polished rock, other times nearly invisible, as if part of it was reflective while the rest devoured light completely. To the human eye, it would look like a bruised mirror, drifting through the dark fragments of light, bending around it, refracting, then vanishing again. And this made scientists wonder, what kind of object could behave like that? Some believed it might be coated with tholins, complex organic compounds produced by radiation, the same kind that tint the surfaces of Pluto and Titan with rusty hues. Others suggested a thin crust of carbonized dust, burned black from eons of cosmic travel. But then new data arrived and everything changed. The orbital stability of 3I Atlas was nearly perfect. Even as it encountered Jupiter's gravity and solar wind, its spin axis remained steady. No wobble, no precession, as if it were balanced deliberately, controlled from within. Natural bodies, especially those shaped irregularly like comets or asteroids, always tumble unpredictably as they move. But this didn't. It moved like it was aware of its balance. Dr. Elara Kim, an astrophysicist at the European Space Agency, put it simply, is greater than, it's behaving like an engineered object even if it's not. That statement rippled through the scientific community like electricity through water. Because deep down, everyone knew what that implied. The idea wasn't new. Harvard's Avi Loeb had said the same thing years earlier about Oumuamua, suggesting it could have been a light sail, a piece of alien technology propelled by starlight. He was criticized then, ridiculed even. But now, with 3-Eye Atlas, his words didn't sound so impossible anymore. Still, others pushed back. They said, no, there must be another explanation. Perhaps it's not alien, perhaps it's ancient. A fragment of something destroyed billions of years ago from a system older than ours, wandering endlessly through the void. A shard of cosmic history, not a visitor, but a survivor. And that's where the mystery deepens. Because if 3-Eye Atlas truly is that old 7 billion years or more, it has seen the galaxy before the sun even existed. It has drifted through stellar nurseries, supernova clouds, and the violent birth of countless star systems. It carries, embedded in its crust, the memory of what the universe was before our world had light. And that makes it more than just an object. It makes it a messenger of time itself. As it approached the orbit of Mars, instruments around the world began to detect faint, rhythmic fluctuations in the electromagnetic spectrum. Not signals, not transmissions, just whispers of energy, pulsing faintly and fading again. They matched no natural pattern known to astrophysics. Too regular to be random, too subtle to be artificial. They were just there. NASA called it an anomaly. SETI called it an opportunity. And the public, they called it something else entirely, a warning. Because for the first time since we began looking into space, the unknown wasn't just far away anymore. It was approaching. Somewhere between Mars and Jupiter, the faint shimmer of 3-Eye Atlas reflected off the solar wind. It wasn't bright enough for the naked eye, but telescopes caught glimpses like a slow, pulsing light beating quietly in the dark. Every 23 hours, its luminosity spiked for several seconds, almost like a heartbeat. What's more, it seemed to rotate perfectly in sync with that cycle 1 complete spin every 23 hours. Not 22.7, not 24.1, exactly 23. A clean numerical rhythm. And when astronomers noticed that this period matched the exact rotation rate of Earth's magnetic field drift, speculation turned into obsession. Coincidence? Or something far stranger? A reflection, perhaps, of a system watching us as closely as we were watching it. But still, no one could prove anything. Every theory, every simulation hit a wall. Some said it was made of solid metal. Others that it was a porous lattice of carbon crystal. Some claimed it wasn't even rotating, that the flicker was something inside it, not on its surface. Something shifting. The truth was simple and terrifying. No one knew what 3-Eye Atlas really was. But everyone could agree on one thing. It wasn't normal. And as the days passed, it kept moving closer, cutting silently through the orbit of Mars and heading toward the inner system, toward sunlight, toward us. The deeper scientists looked, the stranger things became. You see, objects like 3I Atlas shouldn't even exist, at least, not in this form. Interstellar fragments are expected to be rough, chaotic, barely holding together after billions of years in deep space. But this one was intact, whole, almost too perfect. It was traveling through a region of space so old and so empty that some call it the Galactic graveyard, a place where even starlight seems to die slower. And yet, somehow, this object was bright enough to be seen from millions of miles away. That defied logic. Something this ancient shouldn't still shine. Researchers started running chemical simulations, testing every model they could. Iron nickel? No, it would have rusted and darkened beyond reflection. Carbon compounds? Possibly, but not enough to explain the mirrored flicker. And then came one theory, so bizarre it almost sounded poetic. Perhaps 3I Atlas wasn't reflecting the sun's light at all. Perhaps it was releasing its own faint residual radiation from materials unknown to Earth. If true, it meant that the object was not dead. It was active. Not in a biological sense, not alive like us, but active like a mechanism left running. A slow, endless ticking machine, powered by something older than the stars around it. And that idea changed everything. Because if something could survive 7 billion years intact, traveling through cosmic storms, gravitational fields, supernova remnants, it meant one of two things. Either nature had built something indestructible, or something intelligent had built it long before we were born. The debate reignited the same fire that had surrounded Oumuamua years earlier. Astronomers clashed on live broadcasts. Some called it a relic of natural origin, a frozen monument carved by the galaxy itself. Others whispered words that still made their careers tremble. Artifact, probe, messenger. But beyond all the arguments, one question rose above the noise. What if we've already been seen? If this was not a random traveler, if it had purpose, direction, or awareness, then we were no longer just observers of the universe. We were participants in it. For months, data streamed from observatories across the world. Japan, Chile, Arizona, the Atacama Desert, all watching, all listening. And in that time, a subtle pattern began to appear in the light it reflected. Not a signal, not communication, but a rhythm. Like coded music played across distance and time. Every few days, the brightness curve of 3I Atlas repeated with such precision that it defied randomness. It was as though someone or something had designed it to be noticed but never decoded. Even stranger, the pattern wasn't uniform. When translated into frequency maps, the peaks of its brightness aligned with the harmonic intervals found in atomic resonance, the same frequencies hydrogen emits under high energy. Coincidence? Maybe. But if you were trying to send a universal message, hydrogen would be the language. It's the most common element in the universe, and every intelligent civilization would know it. And that realization hit hard, because suddenly the question wasn't just what is it, but who left it. Meanwhile, scientists were beginning to realize just how rare this event was. To even detect an interstellar object like this is almost impossible. For one to pass through the solar system in our lifetime is like catching a falling grain of sand in a hurricane and realizing that it's carved with symbols. As the weeks passed, 3i Atlas began approaching its closest distance to the Sun, its perihelion. This was the moment of truth. If it was made of ice, it would start to boil. If it was metal, it would glow red hot. If it was something else, we'd find out soon enough. And so, NASA, the European Space Agency, and private observatories all focused their instruments on a single, silent object drifting toward the light. The world held its breath. But what came next wasn't heat. It was a pulse. For several minutes, solar observatories picked up a faint oscillation in the electromagnetic field near the object, a pattern perfectly synchronized with solar radiation pressure. It wasn't reflecting sunlight. It was interacting with it. 3i Atlas didn't flare, didn't ignite, it shimmered, like a shadow turning itself into light. The data showed micro-fluctuations that looked eerily similar to energy absorption, almost as if it were using the sun's radiation to charge itself. No known material behaves that way, not rock, not metal, not ice. Something about its surface was reacting to light, transforming it into motion, maybe even power. And for a moment, it felt like the universe had blinked, and we caught it. At that point, everything changed. The tone of reports shifted from curiosity to caution. The idea that this was just a rock had evaporated. It wasn't proof of aliens, not yet, but it was something worse in the eyes of scientists. Proof of something we don't understand. The day of the perihelion arrived, the moment when 3i Atlas would pass closest to the Sunday. For months, telescopes had watched its every move. Mathematicians had mapped its trajectory down to the tiniest decimal. Everything about this object, they thought, was predictable, until it wasn't. The cameras aboard NASA's solar orbiter caught the first hint of change. At first, it looked like a distortion, a faint warping in the solar wind, as if something invisible had curved the space around it. But the data didn't lie. 3i Atlas had slowed down. Not because of drag, not because of impact. It simply decelerated. You have to understand how impossible that is. An interstellar object moving at over 130,000 miles per hour does not stop. It can't. The force needed to slow something that massive would equal the energy of every nuclear bomb ever detonated combined. Yet, here it was, drifting calmly, smoothly, almost deliberately, just above the solar corona. Scientists went silent. For a few long minutes, no one said anything. Then one of them whispered, "That's not possible." But it was happening. The data feeds showed a precise and controlled reduction in speed, a maneuver that defied every known law of celestial mechanics. No jets, no vapor, no plume of energy, no outgassing, nothing. And then, even more chilling, its orbit began to shift. The trajectory bent ever so slightly, as if guided by an unseen hand. The sun's gravity alone couldn't account for it. Something else had intervened. Some called it a gravitational slingshot, a natural orbital correction caused by complex solar interactions. But to those watching the raw data, it looked like a choice, a maneuver. Then came the light. A faint halo appeared around the object, not the fiery outburst of vaporizing ice, but a cold, bluish-white shimmer that danced across its surface. It pulsed rhythmically, perfectly symmetrical, almost like the slow inhale and exhale of a sleeping giant. And when the brightness peaked, the object vanished from visible light. For nearly 8 minutes, the same amount of time it takes sunlight to reach Earth, it was gone. When it reappeared, everything was different. Its velocity had changed. Its trajectory, too. 3I Atlas was no longer following the expected path. Instead of continuing out of the solar system, it had reoriented toward a new route, one that curved toward the outer planets, toward Jupiter. That single observation sent shockwaves through the global scientific community. Jupiter, the gas giant, the gravitational anchor of our solar system, is a world with dozens of moons, several of which may hold oceans beneath their icy crusts. Europa, Callisto, Ganymede, worlds that could harbor life, worlds we've dreamed of exploring, and now something was heading straight for them. No one knew what to make of it. NASA tried to explain it as a coincidence, a natural gravitational assist. But the calculations didn't line up. The energy shift, the precision of the angle, the perfect deceleration, it all looked too clean, too precise. Meanwhile, deep space telescopes recorded something else, faint emissions, like low-frequency radio waves pulsing from the object in evenly spaced intervals. They weren't strong enough to be a transmission, at least not in any language we could decode, but their spacing matched something eerie, the same 23-hour rhythm that astronomers had noticed weeks earlier. That same heartbeat. It was as if the object had stabilized itself, then used the sun's gravity as leverage, not to escape, but to redirect. By the following week, its path was unmistakable. 3I Atlas was en route to the Jovian system, on a perfect course for the moons. Every attempt to explain it only led to more confusion. Some said it was natural. Others whispered that it was intentional. But nobody could ignore what the data was screaming. This wasn't chaos. This was control. In the halls of NASA, meetings turned tense. Officials from the European Space Agency, Japan, and India convened in secret. Publicly, they downplayed the event. Privately, they didn't sleep. Because if an object from interstellar space could slow down, change direction, and navigate the gravity of our sun with that kind of precision, then it meant something terrifyingly simple. We were no longer looking at a random piece of rock. We were looking at a decision. Telescopes tracked it relentlessly as it drifted toward Jupiter. But in the void of space, silence doesn't mean nothing is happening. For weeks, the object's light pulse faded, dimming almost to black. Some said it was entering a dormant phase, a sleep mode. Others speculated it was conserving energy, preparing for something ahead. Then, as it neared the orbit of Jupiter, strange reflections began appearing on nearby instruments. The planet's powerful magnetic field was interacting with it, bending, distorting, like ripples of static in a dark sea. Radio telescopes in Spain and Chile detected electromagnetic echoes that repeated in cycles of 3. Each echo matched the same frequency shift seen during its solar maneuver. 3 cycles, 3 pulses, 3I Atlas. It was as if it was announcing itself. And then, for the first time, images emerged. Not clear ones, faint silhouettes, filtered through radiation and shadow, but they showed structure, sharp lines where there should have been smooth curves, angles, symmetry, shapes that nature rarely makes. Even with all our instruments, no one could say for certain what it was. A mountain of ice and metal? A fragment of a broken planet? Or something designed? But one thing was clear. Whatever it wasn't done yet. By the time 3I Atlas entered Jupiter's gravitational reach, Earth's telescopes were already straining to follow it. Its motion was slow, deliberate, and eerily precise, as if every kilometer it traveled had already been planned long before our species even learned to walk upright. The gas giant filled the backdrop like a living storm, its swirling clouds glowing amber and gold against the endless black. Lightning rippled across its surface, silent and distant, like a god breathing in its sleep. And somewhere near those clouds, just above the invisible line where Jupiter's magnetosphere stretches like a shield, the object stopped. Completely. No more acceleration. No more drift. Just stillness, perfect and absolute. That alone made it historic. Objects don't stop in space. There's no air resistance, no friction, no reason to ever slow down. Yet there it was, frozen against the pull of Jupiter's gravity, balancing in the void like a feather resting on invisible air. Then something extraordinary happened. The magnetic readings spiked. For a brief moment, less than 6 seconds, Jupiter's immense field fluctuated, twisting like a heartbeat seen through static. And within that pulse, 3I Atlas changed. It began to unfold, not mechanically, not with noise or visible parts, but with motion that seemed to ripple through itself as though it were made of liquid light, shifting, bending, stretching. Its shape elongated, then expanded like a thin mirror unfurling into a vast, flat structure. And then, slowly, from its edges, faint blue arcs began to emerge, glowing trails of light that reached toward the planet, like roots searching for soil. For the first time in human history, we were watching something not built by us move with intent. Across the world, observatories went silent. The live feeds showed it clearly, a massive, perfectly symmetrical structure hovering over Jupiter's north pole, its surface shimmering with geometric precision. It was estimated to be at least 20 kilometers across the size of a small city and radiating a faint electromagnetic signature unlike anything seen before. Spectral scans showed no reflection of sunlight. Instead, it appeared to absorb and redistribute radiation from Jupiter itself. It was feeding, not biologically, but through energy transforming the planet's magnetic field into power. And then, without warning, a bright pulse of light burst outward. It wasn't explosive, it was beautiful. A silent wave of white and cyan energy rippled across the Jovian atmosphere, distorting the auroras that crowned the poles. For several minutes, the northern lights of Jupiter danced in perfect rhythm with the pulses from 3I Atlas, a synchronization no human could explain. Back on Earth, observatories in Hawaii, Chile, and Australia captured the phenomenon. In each frame, the timing was exact. The pulse interval? 23 hours. That same rhythm, that same silent heartbeat. It was almost as if it was aligning itself, tuning in to something deeper than physics. And then the data stopped. All sensors tracking the object went offline simultaneously. Communication satellites in Jupiter's region flickered and failed. A global blackout of telemetry lasted exactly 3 minutes and 46 seconds. When the systems came back, the object was gone, vanished. No debris, no energy trail, no heat signature. Just emptiness, as if it had never been there at all. Some believed it had disintegrated. Others said it had slipped behind Jupiter, hidden by the planet's immense shadow. But there was one final clue, a faint, narrow-band signal picked up by NASA's Deep Space Network just seconds after the blackout ended. It wasn't a message. It wasn't even in a frequency we use. It was a pure tone, a single continuous wave. Mathematically perfect. Exactly 1,420 megahertz, the frequency of neutral hydrogen, the most universal signal in the cosmos. Every intelligent species, if they exist, would know that frequency. It's the sound of the universe itself. And that was the last we ever heard of 3I Atlas. No further detections. No reflections. No orbit. Gone. But weeks later, astronomers noticed something else, a disturbance in the atmosphere of Ganymede, Jupiter's largest moon. It wasn't a storm. It wasn't radiation. It was warmth. A faint thermal anomaly deep beneath the icy crust, moving slowly, almost rhythmically, as if something was stirring beneath the surface. NASA called it a natural geothermal event, but the timing was too perfect. The pulse, the light, the silence, and then this. It was as though the object had completed its journey and found a new home. For some, it was proof that we'd witnessed the first contact event in human history. For others, it was a reminder that maybe we weren't ready to understand what we'd just seen. Either way, one truth remained. The universe had shown us something impossible and then taken it back. And since that day, astronomers still search the skies for that faint, steady pulse, the heartbeat of something ancient, intelligent, and maybe still watching, because somewhere out there, beyond the orbit of Jupiter, between stars older than memory, something may have awakened. And if it did, it already knows where to find us. After the disappearance of 3I Atlas, the world was left in silence. No statement from NASA, no confirmed images, no closure. It was as if the event had slipped into a classified shadow, locked away from public eyes. But data doesn't stay hidden forever. Weeks later, observatories across the globe began noticing anomalies that no one could fully explain. A faint electromagnetic echo was spreading through the solar system, not strong enough to be called a signal, but too structured to be noise. It pulsed faintly every 23 hours, the same rhythm once traced to 3I Atlas. The signal came from deep space, not from Earth, not from Jupiter, but from the region between them, an empty patch of void where nothing should exist. At first, scientists dismissed it as an equipment malfunction, interference, perhaps, or calibration error. But then, multiple observatories began reporting the same thing, at the same time, from different continents. Chile, India, Hawaii, each had detected the same faint hum, the ghost of a frequency that refused to fade. It was as though something massive was still out there, but invisible. By December, reports from deep space sensors indicated minor gravitational fluctuations in that region. Tiny, almost immeasurable changes, like the subtle ripple of a passing ship in a still ocean. Something was moving. Something without light, without reflection, without sound. The phenomenon drew comparisons to Oumuamua's final trajectory, the moment when it too had accelerated, leaving behind no visible exhaust or debris. Back then, scientists had argued for years about what caused that acceleration. Some blamed outgassing from hidden ice pockets. Others believed it was light pressure from a thin metallic surface. But none of those explanations fully fit the data. Now it was happening again. Only this time the scale was larger, the disturbance stronger. And the direction? It wasn't outward, toward the stars. It was inward, toward the Sunday. The signal pulses continued faint but consistent, as if the object had begun tracing a new orbit around our star. And that orbit wasn't random. Its alignment matched the paths of the inner planets Earth, Venus, and Mercury. In a press briefing that lasted less than 5 minutes, NASA officially labeled it solar interference. They said it was nothing unusual, the kind of static that space telescopes occasionally pick up from radiation storms. But among astronomers, the tone was different. Privately, they began calling it the echo. The echo seemed to carry faint modulations, not language, not code, but pulses spaced in prime number sequences: 2, 3, 5, 7, 11. Patterns that nature rarely produces by accident. It was as if something was testing, probing, or perhaps measuring, and always in silence. Meanwhile, a quiet panic began to spread through scientific circles. If 3i Atlas hadn't been destroyed, then where had it gone? And if it had, then why was something still responding to it? By early January, a new anomaly appeared, this time on Earth itself. Satellite systems began detecting low-level electromagnetic fluctuations in the upper atmosphere. They were weak, harmless, almost unnoticeable, but they synchronized perfectly with the echo's timing. Every 23 hours, 16 minutes, and 4 seconds, the same faint spike appeared. It wasn't enough to cause disruption, but it was enough to be recorded, enough to raise questions. A few amateur radio astronomers began posting their findings online, unfiltered and raw. One uploaded a visual plot of the frequency data, showing clear peaks spaced evenly across several days. He labeled it Hydrogen Whispers. Within 24 hours, the video vanished. His account disappeared too, but copies of the data spread, quickly mirrored, archived, shared quietly among scientists and enthusiasts who knew what they were looking at. The frequency, when translated into sound, produced something haunting, a low hum that rose gently, like a distant wind pressing against the walls of the universe. It wasn't random. It wasn't mechanical. It almost sounded alive. At this point, some began to wonder if 3i Atlas hadn't left the solar system at all. What if it had merged with something, a field, a dimension, a layer of space that our instruments weren't designed to perceive? After all, what we see, stars, planets, light, is only a fraction of reality. Beyond it lies the invisible scaffolding of dark matter and magnetic pressure, the currents that hold galaxies together. What if that's where it went? Not away, but through. Weeks turned into months, and the echo persisted. By February, it had weakened slightly, its rhythm more sporadic, almost like a heartbeat fading into sleep. But one final event reignited the mystery. A probe orbiting Mars, an old relay satellite from the early 2032, detected something extraordinary. A brief, translucent distortion in the background of space, captured across several frames. When slowed down, the image showed a faint, disk-like shadow, not dark, but faintly glowing, moving silently behind the red planet. Then it was gone. The engineers reviewing the footage noticed something else, a pattern in the pixel noise of the transmission. A sequence of bright and dim flashes that, when decoded, formed a repeating set of coordinates. Those coordinates pointed not to Mars, but to a region just beyond Jupiter's moon Ganymede, the same moon that had shown unexplained warmth beneath its icy surface months earlier. Coincidence? No one could say, but one line from an internal ESA report said it best. Is greater than if 3I Atlas truly went dormant beneath the Jovian ice, then we may not have lost it. We may have only given it time to wake up. By late March, the silence around 3I Atlas had taken on a strange rhythm, one that almost felt conscious. The echo still pulsed every 23 hours, 16 minutes, and 4 seconds, spreading faintly across the heliosphere. And yet, the signal wasn't uniform anymore. Something was changing. Around the same time, researchers in Finland and Argentina began noticing something strange. The aurora borealis had started behaving unpredictably. Waves of green and violet light danced across the night sky, not during solar storms, not during geomagnetic activity, but in perfect alignment with the echo's pulse. Every 23 hours, Earth's magnetosphere shimmered subtly, like a breath moving through the sky. Scientists published their findings quietly. They called it magnetic resonance interference, blaming fluctuations in solar wind. But that explanation didn't hold. The solar wind was calm. Too calm? Meanwhile, deep in the Atacama Desert, an array of radio telescopes caught a glimpse of something breathtaking. For just under 11 seconds, a massive distortion appeared between Jupiter and Earth, like a ripple in glass, bending starlight. When enhanced, the image revealed a faint outline, curved, symmetrical, eerily familiar. It looked like a reflection of the same structure that once hovered above Jupiter's pole. Only this time, it was closer. The scientists running the array didn't release the footage. They shared it privately with NASA, the European Space Agency, and a handful of astrophysicists under strict confidentiality. But one anonymous source leaked a frame, a single image, that spread across hidden astronomy forums and encrypted networks. It showed a transparent silhouette, spanning kilometers in width, faintly glowing in the dark. It wasn't visible in the spectrum of light our eyes could see only in the radio band, where it pulsed with quiet, regular energy. Some described it as a ship. Others thought it was a reflection, a gravitational mirage of something elsewhere in space. But those who stared too long at the data noticed something else. The pulse wasn't random. The pattern was identical to the one recorded from Jupiter's northern auroras. 3-eye Atlas hadn't just disappeared. It had moved. Its energy signature was weaker now, softer, almost as if it were cloaked within another field. It hovered somewhere between the orbits of Mars and Earth, hidden, silent, invisible to optical telescopes, but leaving behind a trail of electromagnetic fingerprints. And with every cycle of the echo, small atmospheric anomalies began to appear across Earth. Tiny fluctuations in air pressure, invisible disturbances in satellite transmissions. Even the ionosphere, the planet's thin upper shield, began vibrating with low-frequency tremors. None of it was dangerous, none of it destructive, but all of it synchronized perfectly. The same time, the same rhythm, the same pulse. It was as if something enormous was breathing in orbit. People began to notice. Not scientists, but ordinary people, night watchers, stargazers, ham radio operators. They started uploading recordings of strange humming sounds that would echo through the static of their devices at night. Each sound lasted for less than 10 seconds, then faded, leaving a faint electric buzz behind. One video in particular went viral before it was removed. It showed a man standing under a clear night sky, holding a radio scanner. He pointed it toward Jupiter's position in the sky, and right on cue, a deep, resonant tone emerged. Not random noise. A note, a frequency, clean, mathematical, almost melodic. That clip was reposted hundreds of times before disappearing. But those who heard it said it didn't sound mechanical. It sounded like a choir of whispers trapped in metal. Then, on April 12, 2026, at 3:16 UTC, the hum grew stronger. Across the northern hemisphere, hundreds of private observatories detected a sudden energy surge emanating from deep space, a directed beam of low-frequency radiation heading toward Earth. It wasn't harmful. It didn't heat the atmosphere or interfere with communications. It just passed through everything, silently, flawlessly, like a signal searching for resonance. And then the world's magnetometers all spiked at once. Every instrument, from Iceland to Chile, from Russia to Australia, each one recorded the same pattern, a repeating set of pulses encoded with mathematical perfection. But the most startling part wasn't what it transmitted, it was what it aligned with. The timing of the signal matched exactly with Earth's rotational cycle. The beam wasn't random. It was locked perfectly to the planet's spin. For the first time, it wasn't the object adjusting to space. It was space adjusting to us. After that, the night skies began to change. Not dramatically, subtly, beautifully. For those awake in dark regions, faint lines of light appeared between the stars. Thin, luminous strands like silk threads stretching across the heavens. They weren't meteors. They weren't satellites. They were motionless, as if an invisible web was being drawn around our world. Some said it was nothing more than atmospheric refraction, but others noticed something the scientists hadn't mentioned publicly. Those threads always converged at one single point in the sky, the region near Jupiter. By mid-April, the entire planet seemed to hum with a frequency no one could hear, yet everyone could feel. Birds began migrating off schedule. Magnetic compasses twitched unpredictably, and deep-sea sensors, the kind used to monitor tectonic activity, began recording faint oscillations, rhythmic and synchronized with the echo from space. It wasn't seismic. It wasn't magnetic. It was something else, something no instrument had ever been designed to detect. Across the globe, quiet meetings took place behind closed doors at NASA, the European Space Agency, and China's National Space Center. The public saw nothing, but inside those rooms, there was panic. The data from multiple satellites now confirmed what no one wanted to believe. Earth's magnetic field was resonating, vibrating gently, almost imperceptibly in the exact frequency range of the echo. It wasn't fluctuating randomly. It was responding, almost like an instrument being tuned. For decades, scientists had considered the Earth's magnetosphere a passive shield, protecting us from solar wind and radiation. But now, for the first time, it was behaving like an antenna, receiving, amplifying, reacting. The realization hit hard, not because it meant danger, but because it meant connection. Something out there was communicating, not through language or light, but through the very heartbeat of the planet itself. As the days passed, the effect became measurable. The ionosphere grew denser. Auroras intensified. Radio signals bounced farther than ever before, carrying strange distortions, faint background harmonics, like hidden tones buried in static. Amateur radio operators started calling it the song. They claimed you could record it if you pointed a high-gain antenna toward Jupiter and listened long enough. Some said it sounded like wind passing through glass. Others swore it was voices, whispering, repeating, almost chanting. One researcher, Dr. Hanako Watanabe from Japan's Space Observation Network, managed to isolate a pattern within the signal. When visualized, it looked like a waveform, clean, symmetrical, and impossibly stable. But when she slowed it down, the peaks and troughs revealed something more. Each interval represented a ratio identical to the golden mean 1.618, the same proportion that defines everything from galaxies to seashells. Nature's most perfect design encoded in the hum of space. At this point, the mystery of Three-Eye Atlas was no longer just a question of where it had gone. It was now about what it had become. It wasn't just near Jupiter anymore. The readings showed faint gravitational distortions appearing all throughout the solar system around Saturn, Neptune, even the Oort cloud. Each pulse carried with it a ripple, like invisible waves spreading through a dark ocean. Voyager 2, silent for decades, suddenly transmitted a burst of data. Not words, not signals, but measurements. It recorded a passing gravitational surge so subtle it could have been missed, except it was synchronized perfectly with the echo. For a few hours, the ancient probe's instruments flickered back to life. Then, silence. NASA never released the transmission publicly, but leaked internal memos described it as a structured fluctuation consistent with artificial manipulation. The implication was staggering. If true, it meant that something vast, maybe the same force behind Three-Eye Atlas, was manipulating gravity itself. On April 22nd, astronomers detected a faint shimmer in the asteroid belt, a reflection that shifted direction against sunlight. When magnified, it wasn't solid, it was translucent, an enormous shape, refracting light in curved lines as though bending space around itself. It drifted slowly toward the inner solar system, almost like a ghost ship moving through fog. No one made an official statement, but messages leaked. The U.S. Space Command issued a classified notice to multiple observatories, warning them to avoid releasing infrared images taken between April 21st and April 28th. The reason? Thermal anomaly inconsistent with known objects. By then, even the moon wasn't silent. Lunar seismographs began recording faint, periodic vibrations not from impacts or quakes, but from resonance. The same 23-hour cycle, the same pattern. Something was synchronizing not just with Earth, but with its satellite too. Then came the event that no one could explain. On May 2nd, at precisely 4 UTC, every magnetometer across Earth recorded a global spike, the largest ever measured. For 10 full seconds, compasses spun wildly. The skies above the poles ignited in violet light, and in orbit, satellites briefly went dark. When systems recovered, the data revealed something impossible. A wave of pure magnetic alignment sweeping from space, passing through Earth, and out the other side as though the entire planet had been scanned. The readings showed no damage, no radiation, just perfect synchronization. Every part of Earth's magnetic field had momentarily pulsed in harmony with an unknown external force. Afterward, something subtle changed. For weeks, gravity readings across several continents fluctuated slightly, just enough to be noticeable on the most sensitive instruments. Tiny changes in pendulum experiments. Slight anomalies in time measurements from atomic clocks. Milliseconds lost and then regained. It was as if the planet itself was recalibrating, aligning to something far greater. By May 9th, even the Hubble successor telescope, positioned far beyond Earth's atmosphere, captured something chilling. A faint circular distortion in the darkness near the orbit of Mars, like the outline of a vast, invisible eye. And just before the image feed cut off, a single flash of light reflected from within it. Not from the sun, not from any planet, but from something watching back. By mid-May, it was no longer possible to pretend nothing was happening. You didn't need instruments or satellites anymore. You could see it. Every night, across the world, faint ribbons of light began appearing in the sky. They weren't auroras. They weren't meteors. They moved too slowly, too deliberately. From city rooftops to empty deserts, people watched thin, glowing arcs stretch across the horizon, shimmering bands that pulsed once every 23 hours, just like the echo. The first few nights, they looked harmless, mesmerizing even. But soon, observers noticed a strange detail. The arcs always seemed to form above large bodies of water, oceans, lakes, even reservoirs. Wherever water gathered, the lights mirrored it as if something above was tracing the planet's reflection. Fishermen off the coast of Chile reported their compasses spinning in circles. Boats in the North Atlantic drifted off course by several miles overnight. GPS systems blinked out, and yet none of it caused panic. The world was caught somewhere between awe and disbelief, staring upward at a phenomenon no one could explain. NASA and the European Space Agency issued brief statements. They called it Upper atmospheric plasma refractivity, a natural alignment of charged particles following solar wind patterns. But experts quickly pointed out the flaw. The sun was in a dormant phase. There were no solar storms, no coronal mass ejections, nothing that could cause synchronized global illumination. What was more unsettling was the timing. Each light event occurred exactly when the echo's pulse reached its 23-hour peak. It was like a cosmic heartbeat playing out in the sky. And then something new appeared. In the middle of the Pacific Ocean, near a region known as the Point of Inaccessibility, the furthest place from any land, satellites picked up an enormous shadow beneath the water. It wasn't a cloud. It wasn't a current. It was something geometric. Infrared scans showed heat signatures forming a circular outline nearly 50 kilometers wide. But the strangest part wasn't its shape, it was its depth. It wasn't resting on the ocean floor. It was suspended mid-water, hovering silently thousands of meters below the surface, defying physics. The world's leading observatories turned their instruments toward it, but the region suddenly became inaccessible. Every satellite feed passing over that area went dark. Radar bounced back blank. The ocean itself seemed to have become opaque. Meanwhile, strange patterns began appearing on Earth's magnetic map new, perfectly circular distortions scattered across both hemispheres. Each distortion matched the size and orientation of the shadow beneath the Pacific. It was as though whatever had arrived in orbit was now projecting downward. In the following days, pilots flying commercial routes over the Atlantic began reporting bursts of static that lasted exactly 9 seconds every hour. On the hour, air traffic controllers dismissed it as interference, but flight data showed small altitude fluctuations during each event planes, gently rising or sinking by a few feet, as though passing through invisible waves. The global scientific community was split. Half believed this was the result of a vast electromagnetic event, an interaction between the solar wind and an unknown interplanetary field. The other half stayed silent, terrified that saying too much might confirm the unthinkable. That the force behind 3I Atlas had entered Earth's environment. And then came the recordings. On May 26th, several deep space listening stations in Greenland, Siberia, and Australia captured something impossible, not just pulses, but structure. For the first time, the echo carried modulation complex harmonics, stacked and layered like chords in a symphony. When those frequencies were converted into sound, they formed a pattern unmistakably intentional, not random, not natural. A message. The frequencies corresponded to hydrogen and oxygen resonance, points the elemental markers of water. Embedded within the tone was a mathematical ratio representing Earth's orbit and rotation. It was, in essence, an address. It wasn't calling out. It was responding. Governments met behind closed doors. The UN Security Council held emergency midnight sessions under the title Global Environmental Coordination. But no transcripts were ever released. Within a week, most live satellite feeds of Earth's upper atmosphere were quietly cut off. Weather agencies switched to pre-recorded loops, and on June 3rd, the internet briefly flickered not offline, but distorted. For 12 minutes, timestamped data on servers worldwide lost synchronization, then snapped back into perfect unity, as if the planet's digital heartbeat had been manually reset. By morning, new stars were visible in the sky. But these weren't stars. They didn't twinkle. They drifted slowly, forming faint triangular patterns, always facing toward Jupiter. And every night they moved a little closer. No official source acknowledged them, but those who tracked their movement realized something extraordinary. The formations weren't random. They were orbiting Earth at distances once reserved for communication satellites, and their motion matched the same pattern recorded around Jupiter months earlier, the same rhythm, the same silent choreography. Whatever was happening wasn't confined to one planet anymore. It was expanding, coordinated, purposeful. Some said it was the beginning of contact. Others said it was the start of an observation. But deep in classified corridors, one document circulated quietly between agencies. Its subject line was short but chilling. 3-Eye Atlas. Stage 2 synchronization complete. By the second week of June, humanity began to feel the rhythm. It wasn't just in the sky anymore. It was in the body. People across the world reported strange patterns in their sleep, waking up at the same minute each night, precisely when the echo peaked. It didn't matter where they lived, New York, Lagos, Tokyo, the Sahara. Every time zone aligned, every heartbeat fell into sync. Hospitals noticed something eerie. For the first time in medical history, global brainwave data began showing coherent resonance at a single frequency, 7.83 Hz, the same as the Earth's Schumann resonance. The planet and its inhabitants were literally pulsing together. At first, scientists dismissed it as mass coincidence, collective psychology. But when EEG machines in sealed laboratories began showing synchronized readings with no human subjects connected, panic turned to silence. It wasn't hysteria. It was physics. Something had woven itself through every living circuit, every electromagnetic field, every neuron. The world's night sky was now unrecognizable. Jupiter blazed brighter than ever before, not from reflection, but illumination. Its northern hemisphere shimmered with vast, symmetrical shapes, like spirals of light forming and collapsing in slow motion. They looked like storms, but too geometric, too perfect. Observers counted 9 of them, orbiting each other like clockwork gears. They called it the Eye Array. And then Earth's oceans began to sing. At first, it was sonar operator submariners who heard tones reverberating through water columns where no sound should travel. Then came coastal recorders, deep-sea microphones, and finally, humans on shorelines who swore they could feel the hum vibrating through their bones. It was low, resonant, endless, like a note being held across continents. And when scientists converted it to visual data, it formed something impossible. A perfect, 3-dimensional helix, spiraling through frequency bands, matching the path of the echo recorded months earlier. The realization was terrifying. The signal wasn't just being transmitted to Earth. It was being transmitted through it. Somewhere between Jupiter and Earth, space itself was vibrating. Invisible, inaudible, but measurable, like a bridge being tuned to connect 2 worlds. And then everything stopped. On June 21st, 2026, the exact moment of the solstice, all signals ceased. The hum, the auroras, the atmospheric lights, silence, absolute, perfect silence. For 36 hours, the planet's electromagnetic background went flat. No static, no solar resonance, nothing. Even radio telescopes listening to deep space reported emptiness. A void so pure it was almost unnatural. But it wasn't silence. It was listening. On the second night, astronomers watching Jupiter reported something no one had ever seen before. The planet's great red spot, a storm raging for centuries, began to fade. Not vanish. Fade. Its crimson hue dissolved into soft white light that spread outward in concentric circles. For a few hours, Jupiter looked less like a gas giant and more like an enormous glowing sphere pulsing with internal light. At that exact moment, Earth's magnetosphere flickered. A thin, translucent curtain of light appeared across the upper atmosphere, not green like an aurora, but pale blue, stretching from pole to pole. It was so faint that you could only see it through polarized glass, a ghostly wave crossing the heavens. And hidden within it was motion. Shapes, countless, moving shapes. The world's telescopes pointed upward. Infrared imaging revealed hundreds, maybe thousands of objects entering the upper stratosphere. They weren't meteors. They weren't debris. They were controlled. Each object was perfectly synchronized, descending at steady velocity before stopping high above the clouds. They hovered, motionless, forming vast geometric patterns visible only to satellites, circles within circles, spirals, lattices, like the inside of a clock beginning to move. Governments scrambled jets, but radar failed. Every signal bent around the shapes as if space itself refused to reveal them. No one fired. No one dared. And then the pulse returned one final time, louder, deeper, vibrating every structure on Earth. The oceans shimmered as their surfaces flattened waves frozen in perfect calm. Clouds parted over continents, revealing constellations glowing brighter than ever. And from orbit, astronauts aboard the International Space Station saw the impossible. A faint, golden ring forming between Earth and the Moon, a filament of energy connecting the two like a thread of light. It expanded slowly, elegantly, until it circled the entire planet. And then, for the briefest moment, time itself seemed to pause. Every clock froze, every heartbeat aligned, every frequency on Earth, magnetic, electrical, biological, synchronized into one. The entire planet resonated. A single, perfect note. And through the static, through the trembling air, came a sound that was almost human. A whisper that no one understood, but everyone felt. Not a warning, not a threat. A message is greater than you were never alone. Then, silence. When systems rebooted, the lights above Jupiter were gone. The arcs across the oceans vanished, and the objects hovering in the sky, every last one dissolved like mist. But the world was different. Clocks ran half a second slower. Gravitational readings shifted slightly, and faint magnetic anomalies continued to hum beneath the crust, as if something deep within the planet had awakened. NASA's final report never reached the public, but leaked summaries hinted at what they'd discovered. Buried under the Pacific, exactly where the shadow had been, sensors picked up an object 47 kilometers wide, perfectly spherical, composed of an unknown alloy. It wasn't moving. It wasn't transmitting. It was waiting. 3i Atlas hadn't passed us by. It had become part of us. And while the world tried to return to normal, astronomers noticed something subtle, almost poetic. Jupiter's glow hadn't fully faded. It now pulsed gently every 23 hours, 16 minutes, and 4 seconds. The same rhythm, the same echo. The universe had answered and left its heartbeat behind. If you felt that shiver deep in your chest, that quiet hum under your skin, you're not imagining it. Something changed out there, and maybe in us too. Subscribe and stay with this channel, because when the next object appears, I promise you'll want to be here when the first signal returns.